It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. For those of you who are just joining in, you are in store for a great treat. We are in the midst of our nonprofit series. I have to say, this is one of my favorite times of year, hands down. I love our nonprofit series. Every year since the very beginning in 2018, our first year of Her Success Story, from Thanksgiving through New Year's, we have highlighted nonprofits in the world. There is no distinction of big to small, it's here or there, they're all over. Why? Because just as my core values is, this is the time of year, if we could learn how to give as well as receive, we're a good society, and that's good with me. So I am going to introduce you to a fascinating lady who every time we talk, we learn more things that we have in common. So it's just been a blast getting to know. Nina Guralnick is the executive director of New York International Children's Film Festival. I want to repeat that because I want you to get it. New York International Children's Film Festival, short for NYICFF. No, I'm never going to remember that. An arts organization dedicated to building understanding, promoting empathy, and amplifying voices that bridge the global divide through film. So let's talk about the importance and why this is important for our children. You know, Nina, I can go on and on about you. Your background is diverse, and we're going to learn a bit about that. But welcome to Her Success Story, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us.
Thank you so much. I love the podcast, and I love that you focus on nonprofits. I have a background in the for-profit world and now in the nonprofit world, and it is fascinating to learn about both, and it's so great to highlight all the wonderful work that's being done in this space. So thank you.
Share a little bit about, because your background is diverse, right?
Yes.
So many people, who end up like they're focused on a nonprofit career and things like that.
Yeah.
That was not your background. Can you just share a little bit of your background and what brought you to this point in your journey?
Yeah, it's funny. I was on the subway in, I was thinking about, as I was leaving my very first job, the president of the company was saying lovely things to me about my work, which was really nice to hear and confidence boosting. But he said something to me that I always had excellent results, but the way I got there was often not the way everyone else was doing it. And I left him saying that and went, wait, there's a way everyone else is doing it? That would have been so much easier if someone had just told me. But that's just not my way. I tend to kind of figure things out for myself and have leaned into, career choices where I learn, where I get to learn and explore and figure things out. And so I started in the music world. And I was drawn to innovation, and I leaned into the digital space. I started in sort of marketing and project management. I like to be in the middle of things and understand how everything worked. And then I leaned into the digital space, and I built what at that point was called the new media department for DreamWorks Records, at a time when nobody really understood what was happening. And I was doing business development and marketing, and kind of, we were just creating this whole new world of direct to consumer, both for ways for bands to connect with their fans, but also ways to sell directly to fans. And it was a blast. And I went from there into a role of producing live events globally for the digital distribution landscape, which was also very new at that time. And my final role in that space was helping to produce a worldwide concert drawing attention to the global climate crisis. Al Gore was a part of the project. We partnered with Al Gore. Right at the time that he was, capturing everybody's attention with an inconvenient truth. And that was it. I was like, wow, I can use my brand building and business development and curiosity, and I can drive things that matter to me.
So that left you living on the West Coast. You had your life, you were living on the West Coast, moving and grooving in the music and event space.
Yep.
Now we're talking to you living in the New York City area, region and on the East Coast, and you're all about the New York International Children's Film Festival. So
Yeah.
how did the background end up being this today? What transpired?
So I came back to the East Coast. I'd been on the East Coast for much of my early career, and I came back because I love New York. I loved LA too, but my family was here, and it drew us back. I came back to the East Coast. I had my second kid, and I'd been through kind of building a series of companies, which is like
Okay.
having a child. And I
Like
tend
having
to
several childs.
exactly.
Children.
And I learned about myself by my second kid that I'm good at doing one thing at a time, or focusing on one thing at a time. And so I focused on her for the first few years of her life and my older daughter. And I was consulting a bit and doing, just a little bit of a slower pace of work and on my terms. And when I was ready to dive back in to full-time work, I didn't want to be on the road as much. I wanted to be home. My parents ran a summer camp, and I grew up working alongside my parents from a very young age, and I really loved that. And this job came up, and I was really drawn to being able to experience my career with my kids. I was really drawn to the idea of having an impact through my expertise, being able to use my skills to have a real impact on kids and kind of bring my approach to my philosophies to this work. I believe that kids just have an incredible inherent capacity and that they deserve to be treated with a huge amount of respect and sophistication and complexities, and being able to do that with my work while bringing in this kind of building. I am good at taking an idea and building an organization around it. And I was taking over
So let
from
me
the
ask you this
founders.
then. Okay, so how did you connect to this organization? So you came to
Uh,
because I remember when we were first talking. It's like, wow, that was cool. Like it's not like you answered. So I was talking to somebody recently, but we were talking about the concept of remember when you used to read the want ads? I
yeah.
remember I got fired from my first job right after college. I got fired, and I remember like you go into the paper and you're reading the
Yes.
want ads. Like how did this become known to you, and how did this become now your next career path?
Yeah. Well, I was ready to go back to work. I'd put the word out in my
That
network that
helps.
I
Putting the words out in your network is an important thing to do.
yeah, and my network is multifaceted. At that point, it also included parents of my kids' peers,
Sure.
which is an incredible
That's a huge part of
expansion.
we're all networks.
Yeah,
It's a huge part of I do this whole thing. I'm not going to do the teaching now by any means, but one day maybe on a podcast I will, of really looking of how our network is intermixed with our professional and personal relationships. But yeah, so you put
yeah.
it out to everyone.
So I put it out to everyone, and I went deep into a interview process for a senior job at an ad tech company that was kind of exploding at that time.
Right.
And a friend of mine, I'd been to the festival, and a friend of mine had gotten an email. She was on the festival email list saying they were looking for their first executive director. And she forwarded it to me and said, I don't know if this would interest you. And I got it and said, I don't know if this would interest me. I loved that film. I'm curious. I'd love to learn more about this organization. And maybe a little bit, I emailed them just because I thought it would satisfy my curiosity. I would learn about the organization. I don't know if I envisioned myself in the role, but I was interested. I'd loved the film and the film experience I had with my youngest daughter. We went to see a
Nice.
beautiful film called The Secret of Kells by Tom Moore that everybody should see. It's incredible animated film, and I loved it. And that had been a couple of years earlier. And I thought like, well, okay. And I sent off my resume and I wrote a cover letter saying why, which was very genuine, saying why I thought, why I was interested in and they wrote back and said, your profile is not at all, you have such an interesting background and you are not at all what we were looking for. I felt a little foolish because, I thought I'd addressed that. I knew
But it's
that.
actually what your first boss said.
Yes, totally.
It's 100%.
Yeah.
It comes full circle.
Yeah, and to kind of protect my ego, I wrote an email back and said, "Totally understand. I completely agree. This is what I was thinking." Because I think I was like, okay, I don't like a little, a little ego bump there. And they wrote back and said, "Okay, we'd like to meet with you." And to be honest, I think filling the role of an executive director in a small organization is really hard because you need a Swiss Army knife, and there aren't a lot of Swiss Army knives out there. And so what I
By the way, I think that is an amazing, and I love that visual, because the
yeah,
second you said it, I'm like, yeah, it has all these things that go in all these different direction and all these tools that do different things. And you're the person who has to hold all those tools together and have to figure out how all those things go in all those different directions and do all those different things.
yeah. Yeah, and it's like a small business
Yeah.
in that sense. And but you add on this whole layer because nonprofits have all these compliance requirements and the fundraising requirement. You're not only running a small business as you normally would, that where you sort of, if you know how to make it function, you may have to do a lot of things, but they're all in one direction. You also have to have this whole other skill set that has nothing to do with delivering films to children in classrooms and families. And so I sort of said, well, I like to learn things, as evidenced by my career. I'm not afraid of a challenge. And, here's the things that I'm good at and that I think I bring to the table. And I think it was interesting. I mean, I think when I first came in, my first 3 or 4 years, I really did approach it much more the way you would approach running a for profit. And I think
And but you have to, because a nonprofit is
it's still a
it's
business.
a business.
Yeah.
It just, when you sell, right? You're still in sales because you're raising capital, you're raising
Yep.
money, but
Yep.
you're not selling to the person who's going to be the direct receiver. You're selling it forward,
Yep.
is kind of how I think about it. But
I
other than
think
that, it's
you
a business entity.
totally. And the point at which I came in, we were transitioning from it being run by the founders who had an incredible vision and had done an amazing job of building this organization,
Right.
but it needed to be right sized. They had relied on a huge amount of donated time and skills from their community. And those were personal connections. And those people loved the organization. But even if we continued to take free services, we needed to acknowledge the cost of those services, or we were endangering the future of the organization. If that person goes away, you're out of business.
Right.
And so there was a lot of just straight business, like how much does it cost to run this organization? We didn't know the answer to that.
That's frightening. To somebody like me, that is just frightening.
But that's what I like. I
Yeah,
love taking an amazing
exactly.
idea and honoring that idea and then building the scaffolding around it. To me, that was like, this is amazing. Like they've done the hard part, which is like they had this vision and it totally resonates with me.
Yeah.
And now I get to come in and just make it run. I get to fix the engine, so so it has some safety
And it
features.
has all the components
Yeah,
to move forward. So
yeah,
share with me a little bit, because I think I'd love our listeners to learn more, okay, about the New York International Film
yeah.
Festival. Okay, so what is this about? Like, I think of, like, is this for young kids, middle kids? And oh, I don't need to listen to this episode because it's about New York and I live somewhere else. And so it's not for me. And I want to
Sure.
kind of like call that misnomer out now.
Absolutely. No, what we are doing can apply to everybody who has children in their lives.
Yeah.
And which is a lot of us, not necessarily your own children. What the festival does is we are curating annually the best new films from around the world for children ages 3 and up. I like to think that really there's no upper age range because the film programs that we're putting together are compelling for anybody, for adults, for children, for teenagers, what have you. I think that, when you think about film as a medium, you can't take a 7-year-old to the best new release because there's just content issues. Like it's not
Yeah.
appropriate. There's stuff that's not appropriate for them to see. And so they're precluded from seeing the best of this art form because of those issues. And we create a program every year that doesn't discriminate on the basis of age. It allows even the youngest to enjoy the best that there is out there. And so that's really the goal. And film, by our estimation, is a medium that is incredibly powerful, especially for kids. They are used to it, they are open to it, and they go into it ready, willing, and able. And it is our job to put something sophisticated and complex and joyful and counter stereotypical onto that screen to challenge them, to make them think. And it's our job to tell them, when you enter this theater, we want to know what you think. We want you to think. We want you to ask questions. We want you to have opinions and not just sit back and kind of let this film flood over you and take a mental nap.
So how has this rolled out to other areas outside the New York area?
Sure.
And what does that look like?
So the core of the program is the festival in New York. So
Right.
like a
And that's in
Tribeca Film
March.
Festival or Sundance or what have you.
Right.
We run the largest film festival for children and families in the United States. We're Oscar qualifying. It's
Nice.
it's a to do. Everybody should come in to the festival. We bring in directors and have Q&As. It's really just like
So
an
the
adult film
kids do
festival.
get to actually talk about the films and learn about that experience. That's
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah. And every touch point, we are signaling to the kids that their opinion matters, that they are part of this dialogue, that film is a dialogue, that it's not supposed to go one way, that they're supposed to then think and question. And so that happens every March, and it's fantastic all over the city. And we love for people to visit, and they do from all over the world. And then we have two other primary programs. We have a national touring program that goes across the country to museums and cultural centers, independent cinemas. And that is 5 short film programs that we compile out of the festival every year. And those play everywhere, both as ticketed events, sometimes as free events, sometimes as school field trips at venues that we partner with everywhere. And then we also have an education program. We run that here in New York, and then we mentor our partners to host those field trips outside of New York City. And that field trip program here in New York is where we run it directly. We are serving about 8,000 students annually. 80% of the students coming to those field trips go to Title I schools, where in New York City, the majority of students at a Title I school are living below the poverty line. And we provide those under-resourced communities with a free field trip, a free high-quality arts program where they get to come in and engage with us in discussion and watch a film program, give their feedback. And importantly, that I think showcases what we do throughout all of our programs, which is to amplify underrepresented voices, to ensure that kids are seeing themselves and their experiences represented and reflected on screen. And the impact that that has on kids is enormous. To see somebody like them, a family like theirs on screen, is incredibly confidence boosting. And similarly, for the child sitting next to them to see a family unlike their own or somebody unlike themselves on screen is an incredible opportunity to learn what the world is like from other people's perspective. And this is how we build empathy. This is how we teach kids how to understand the experience of others and their own experience.
I could think back to the films I saw as a kid, with my parents and like seeing, and I'll date myself, I grew up in the suburbs of the New York City area. And like a big thing to do was like once in a blue moon, and what might have been once every few years, I'm referring to, is we went into a theater called the Ziegfeld Theater and watched this huge screen. And and then we would go out for usually like a frozen hot chocolate and we'd talk about it, right? And it was, we forget, so often we watch a film or we put a film on for our kids to keep them busy so we can do something else. But there's that moment that when you interact with your children, or if it's in a classroom setting and you're with your peers and your teachers, and then you're talking about it. And it's that same sense of importance of the book club, right? Talking about the book, talking about the characters, the dialogue, the other ways to look at things that truly helps educate. And the sooner we do this with our young kids, the sooner we help them see different things from different points of view, exactly what you're talking about, which is just, to me, vitally important.
Absolutely. I mean, I think at our core, it's to celebrate difference is it's just wonderful. And it's wonderful to do it with kids when when you can see that impact, when you can see how much that support helps them. And you can look at the statistics. BIPOC characters are too infrequent in the media that is being served to our kids. LGBTQ characters are too infrequent. And that kind of disappearance in the mainstream media has an enormous effect. We all are so shaped by the media that surrounds us, and to see yourself missing or see positive representation of people like yourself missing is really damaging. And even in school materials, I think it's difficult to keep up with the cultural discussions that are going on. And the wonderful thing about our programs is that we are programming every single year, and especially with the short films where you have real voices coming through, and those films are being made more quickly, more independently. You really are seeing this incredibly culturally responsive material being created, and to be able to bring those beautiful films, that beautiful art in front of kids to get them thinking, I think, has that impact. Things stick with us. Those discussions with your family stick with you. My
Right.
thoughts as comments stuck with me. Like we all have these moments in
These
our life.
moments matter.
Yeah.
These moments matter. The
Yeah.
conversations, the words we leave behind, and the words that we string with our families, with the conversation. You've been the executive director now for quite a while. What's the vision? What's next?
Oh, that is such a good question. It's interesting. I was thinking as coming into this, it's in so many ways the core need and what inspires me to do the work hasn't changed, right? The need to feed kids this material, to meet them in a place where we hold them in high esteem, where we want to hear from them, where we acknowledge that we see them and value them, is the same and doesn't change. But I don't like to sit still, so it always changes. The environment around us changes radically. I mean, the content that we're serving now compared to 12 years ago is totally different. What kids are processing now compared to 12 years ago, compared to 2 years ago, is totally different. And I think for us, the conversations that we're starting are changing all the time. Our curation is changing all the time because of that, and how we deliver content. We really aim to be responsive to our community. We're iterating constantly in order to deliver in a way that's going to be effective and support our partners, be they teachers, parents, kids, movie theaters, museums, in the best way possible.
So, how can our listeners learn more and tap into not just going on what's in New York, but what's going on all over the country?
So our website is the best place to go to learn more about all of it, NYICFF.org. And there, they can find out more about the festival, about our other activities. They can learn more about where donations go, what that funding is fueling. And I think, there's lots of ways to get involved that are sort of listed out on the website.
Right?
But really, I think at the base, it's thinking more about media. People are always going to put kids in front of, we're all busy and we all need help.
We are busy.
And TV.
I have a thing. Life is busy. It's
Yeah.
not going to change.
And
It's
I don't have little kids
life
anymore.
is busy. Guess what? It's going to be busy in January too.
Yeah, I don't have little kids anymore, but I will not ever forget what it's like when you're trying to get something done and you have little kids running around, and TV is a huge help with that. And I don't think we need to feel bad that sometimes we use TV as a babysitter.
Babysitter.
It is what it is. But I think that there's also the opportunity to sprinkle in more enriching shared experiences. And I think that, you can enjoy watching a film together. It's something that you can both enjoy, your kids and yourself at the same time. And then you can talk about your different experiences of the film and responses to the film. And in the simplest level, what you liked and didn't like, or what it made you think about, or which character you liked. And I think it's such an enriching opportunity. And it takes a little bit of effort to find those more complex films. That there are a lot of films being pushed at us, and they're not all of equal quality or complexity. But just as we do as adults, you can look for those things that are a little bit more complicated, and they're out there. And our website certainly lists a lot of them.
It's a great place to start. For any parent and every parent, it's a great place to start. It's a great place to say, oh, I could check this out. I could look for this. And you know what? I encourage every listener, if you are a parent, if you know a parent, share. It's not that hard. It's not that hard, ladies and gentlemen. And that's always what I will say. It's not that hard. Take a moment, give this a listen, check out New York's International Children's Film Festival. I will get this name right. And take a look at the website. Take a look what's out there for our young people, and share it forward with somebody who touches a young person's life. And let's all take this time during the holiday season to enrich ourselves as well as enrich others.
Absolutely.
So Nina, thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you. This was so much fun.
It's so easy.
Yeah, chatting. It's great. Sharing. This is, as you said, sharing. I mean, we all have such diverse experiences and so much to share. And yeah, it was really fun.
And so listeners, I always say at this point, take a moment and take a breath. And with that breath, say, what is your one aha or takeaway from listening in to Nina's and I's conversation? What did you learn? What was intriguing for you? Write it down somewhere and then make a decision about one thing you can do about that. If this is a great episode for you, share it forward with somebody that will be a good listen for. That's all it is. One person sharing one thing, one at a time, has a ripple impact. And stay tuned for so many more wonderful nonprofit interviews. You could go back a few, you could go forward. Stay tuned. Let us know here at Her Success Story and Slater Success what you enjoyed, what else you want to hear. And we're building a great program for you for 2025. See you next week.